Hey everyone. Been a little while since I gave y'all a Kara update, and a number of you have asked. Some of you even in my question submissions for Q&A. Remember that when I solicited questions about a bazillion years ago? Swear to God I'm gonna get through them. But a lot of you have asked about Kara. How is she? How's it going? I ran into tons of you at DEF CON who asked, so here we are. What is Kara's current status? So she is out of the hospital. Some of you may recall back, well, some time ago now. It was when she was, the first crisis was that she was in the male unit, which again, this is Kara in the male population unit. That was awful. Resolved that. She was put in the female unit. This was at the Manhattan Detention Center. That's up in the New York district of federal circuit. And she was protected from inmate violence and harassment, but it was mistreatment from the staff that landed her in a hospital. At the time, I was a little reserved about that. I didn't want to speak to, like, people were like, oh my God, did they like attack her? No, she wasn't attacked. But again, like the system is not set up to care for anybody properly, let alone someone who is trans and disabled. So there was basically, it's medical malpractice. It was awful. It had to do with catheterization by people who are not trained to do. It was awful. We're not going to talk about it much here, but she's recovering. So she could have died from. There was a lot of wounding and infection, and like again, you don't get taken out of prison to go to a hospital, unless basically prison's like, we don't want you dying on our fucking block. So that's why you get sent to a hospital to die, basically. And she didn't. So she cannot be sent back right now to any kind of detention environment, corrections environment. She can't walk. She can't, like, her body's kind of in a wrecked state. So basically what happens to detainees and other people who are incarcerated but can't be in general population is there are arrangements, at least at the federal level, the way it works, is there are arrangements with other care homes. Essentially, a lot of them are like elder care facilities and nursing homes all around the country, which don't just have geriatric patients in them. They have people of all ages, but mostly old people. And one of them exists in the greater New York area. It's out on Long Island, very far away from anything, because land's cheap and like they bid on the contract with the lowest amount, I guess. But there are a number of detainees there, not a huge number, but she's not the only detainee there. That's where she's been moved. And she is still incarcerated, right? So she is still technically in the custody of the Marshal Service. She's not actually guarded always by marshals. It's people who are, some are U.S. Marshals and some are third parties that colloquially would be referred to as marshals, even though I don't think they're sworn. They're like posse. Who the heck knows the intricacies of weird police law? But all of these people guard her round the clock and other detainees round the clock. So again, in lieu of bail for like a disabled freaking service member who can't walk and has brain injury and spinal injury and couldn't go anywhere and has no passport, instead of just normal release, which we are incredibly good at doing, and like the court system doesn't lose people, like they have monitoring, they have, especially at the federal level, people don't just vanish. But instead of that, your tax dollars are paying multiple shifts of surly burly men who probably all make six figures to round the clock watch over a woman who can't get out of her bed without a wheelchair and medical staff and orderlies. So that's where she is and has been for months now. But again, like, because it is still incarceration, and as we will talk later about her conditions, it is absolutely incarceration. Every day is a day of credit, right? So if she gets a sentence or something, like whatever happens, however this case gets dispatched in the end, this is all time served. And I know all of this because we get to talk. Kara does have phone privileges, as you would at any inmate in the federal system has free phone privileges. Like they don't charge people the way they horribly do through Global Tel Link or other phone carriers. That you might have loved ones in the state or local levels where it's just exorbitant rates to talk to anybody. No, the federal level, you're entitled to phone privileges. That exists even in the nursing home. They had a hard time implementing it, which again, it's so funny how you can have a right to something like under the law, but in a corrections environment, anytime the system's like, I don't know how to do that. We can't do that securely because, phone calls are all monitored, right? So they can't just give you a cell phone. They have to have a special system phone that can like be monitored or something. But if they can't find one, or if they didn't ever provision one, because nobody ever asked for one at this nursing home. They're like, would compromise the security of the building if we gave you a regular, no. So any of your rights can just be denied arbitrarily in perpetuity, basically, for security reasons, which basically means your lawyers have to file motions and say, I'm sure you would like to not have to deal with this problem, but this is someone's rights, give them a phone. And that's how it's been a fight for every stupid thing. So yes, she has a phone now that she can use, not like a phone in her bedside, but they will bring a phone to the various people who are housed in the nursing home, including at least one other trans prisoner, I believe. And they, you know, like sometimes they give you a few minutes, sometimes they give you a little bit longer. It's a crapshoot. Something, and this is something that I'm just going to advise anybody who has loved ones in this kind of situation, try to come up with a schedule, if you can, a predictable schedule for when you're going to talk. Because it's like, if we get a 15-minute phone call, it's not really just 15 minutes for either of us, right? Like, it's all the rigmarole and the baloney of like getting the institution to place the call. And then the time you get where you have to emotionally load all the things you've been waiting to say, and all your notes and updates, and you're texting friends and saying, Kara says this, and then they get a response back. You load that into the few minutes you got, and then you just have to sit and emotionally digest it after that. And then you've got like a sheet of notes that you're like, all right, now this is, she said to call this person and call the doctor to get the latest blah, 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 blah. Because you're like doing homework. So try to confine and bound that into some predictable schedule. It's going to be good for you and even for your loved one who is not experiencing freedom. Right now, Kara and I try to talk, you know, every couple of days. And she has a call list of other people she's allowed to call. She can call her ex, Gia. She can call a number of her friends that are now on her call sheet. She can call her lawyers. She has a laptop, obviously no internet or anything, but, you know, to prepare for your defense, you need to review evidence, you need to go over filings, you need to work with your attorneys. So like, you know, they provide a laptop. They provide a laptop that has all the files from evidence, that has the filings. It's, again, think of all of this crazy cost. You are providing this, make no mistake. Your dollars as a taxpayer are providing all of this, none of which would be necessary if we let people out on their own recognizance with an ankle monitor, or with just checking in with pretrial services, who has, again, a tremendous track record of just getting people to show up for trial. But that's where we are right now. Speaking of the people she hears from, it's not just the people on her call sheet, obviously. Those of us who can talk to her on the phone constantly pass her messages from others. And I've been sending her so many of your comments, both your comments down below in the, the YouTubes, and so many of you who came up to me at DEF CON. Oh my God, so many of you just came up to me. It blew my mind at DEF CON. But a lot of you mentioned Kara as well. Like, hey, how's your friend doing? Hey, what's up with Kara? How's her case looking? And it's lovely. It's lovely and kind. And every one of us gets people through hard times, and community support is incredibly important. I've not done as much jail support as some of my friends who have taught me a lot. And everyone's like, oh God, yeah, it's all a community and family effort. So thank you for that. Because the tiny, constant injustices are really that's the freaking killer, man. Like the phone, right? The phone that they had to fight to get. Well, sometimes the phone is like, oh, we didn't charge it. Oh, we forgot. Oh, it's missing. Oh, the phone's broken because maybe someone broke the phone. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they're just like, F you, I'm tired of placing calls today. You don't know. Is a prisoner going to go and say, show me the broken phone? And then the phone is back next week. It sure looks like the same phone. What, did you fix it? So yeah, sometimes the phone is just not there. And on the outside, we don't know. We don't know if she's had a medical issue and been taken back into surgery, or if the marshals are just like, F you, no phone today. There was a time when her attorneys were meeting with her, and they were they gave her a pen to write something. And, you don't have pockets in prison garments. So women, where do you put stuff when you've got shit in your hands, right? She put a pen in her bra strap as she was doing, and the marshal, whoever, was like, are you passing contraband? What are you two sharing? What's going on over there? And this was considered a reason to strip down all of her curtains and all of her drapings in her room. So now she has no privacy, just in front of all the marshals, right? Why? Fuck you, prison. There was a time when we think that maybe she was just getting too many phone calls, and they didn't like that she was having just a little too much contact and support with family. So what happened when she was asleep, they'll bring her, she gets meals. She gets the same meal just about all the time. It's nursing home food, right? You get some, it's pretty unhealthy, but you do what you can. And she's not allowed to have certain things, because she's not a regular nursing home patient, right? So like in an airline, if you're asleep, they'll just bring your meal on a tray and it'll sit there. One time they brought a tray and it had a soda can on the tray. And she was asleep. She's not allowed to have a soda can. She can't have aluminum cans. It's part of security. She can only have the plastic cup. So she woke up and she went, Christ, why is there a soda can here? So that's the only beverage she's going to get. So she eats her, chicken or whatever, pours the bubbly water into a cup, crushes the soda can, throws it out. Mysteriously and magically, wouldn't you know that the marshals came into the room shortly after that, found a soda can in her trash, and said, this is a violation of security, and used that as a reason to strip a bunch of privileges away, like the phone and other things. I think they took all of her writing implements away, her papers away, and she just had to sit there doing nothing until her lawyers found out and then got involved. So it's just constant stream of bullshit. Added to which, Indignity, on top of all of this, I've said she's in like a care home. So yes, she gets medical care, she gets doctor visits, she gets all the things that you would hope. She gets food and so forth. She's shackled to the bed. 2-point shackle, like both legs. Every day. No breaks, unless she's getting up to use a bathroom, which she has to request, and then they have to go through a whole rigmarole. And then there's a wheelchair involved. And then she gets shackled to the wheelchair to go to the bathroom. But that is her life. That is what we're putting someone through. And you might say, like, for what? Why this treatment? What? And remember, this is all intentional. This is how the system is set up. It's intentionally done this way to make it as hard and miserable and crushing, spiritually crushing as possible on everyone that we put through the legal system, because it makes them want to quit. It makes them want to just take a plea without thinking. It is why the federal system has, I think, a 97% conviction rate, which includes pleas. Almost all of it is plea bargains at the federal level, because this is what we do to people. This is what your tax dollars and your government does to people. It doesn't matter who they are, what they've done, what they haven't done. And you might say, is she a hardened criminal? Some of you have found the filings and so forth. It's in the court system. It's in PACER, right? No, she's not a hardened criminal. Kara, and I haven't spoken about this before. I'll touch on it a little bit right now if you want. Kara is charged meaningfully. She's charged with false ID documents, and the trouble is she had a conviction for this when she was much younger, which, as a lot of people in the trans community are aware, false ID documents are a very common thing that people dabble in, either out of self-preservation, so they don't get dead named if they buy a drink at a restaurant, or in her case, curiosity, like hacker curiosity. Part of one of the real ironies that she and I talked about when we got a phone call one day, I was like, oh, this is Kara calling. Excuse me, guys, I got to step out. And I'm talking to her, and I was like, you'll never believe where I am right now. And she said, where? And I was like, well, I'm at one of the Red Team Alliance facilities. We're running a private workshop with the FBI. We're showing them all about fake IDs. I'm showing them how to make fake documents on the card printer that they just acquired. And they want to know how templates work and how different color shifting ribbon of ink works. And she's like, you're kidding me. I'm like, yeah, literally the same type of stuff that she was dabbling in and experimenting with in her home lab, because that was not done under the auspices of some contract, of some business, of some, with the benediction and blessing of American profit. That makes it criminal, allegedly, in her case. But for me, I can be laughing it up with government agents, watching them crank out fake ID after fake ID with their own face on it. Look at me, I made up the state of Albonia. This is a fake driver's license with look at this hologram template I just made. That's the system, man. So you might inquire based on that. You're like, all right, but Dave, so she's not a hardened criminal. What people do dumb crap all the time with fake IDs and they fuck around. How does this this was a raid, right? Her apartment was trashed. How does this really happen? There must be something more. Depends how cynical you want to be. There could be something more. When Kara was first arrested and I was engaging, I called Chelsea, I called Moira, and I was talking to people. Even Moira was like, I know this. Why do I know this person? who, I said photos. She's like, I've seen this, who is this person? Kara is well known by a lot of people. They just don't know who Kara is, right? Kara's famous for this photo. Now some of you have seen this photo. Yeah. This was, she was doing modeling in Central Park one day. And as they were finishing the photo shoot, just laughing with the photographer and stuff, this was an impromptu thing. She just climbed up on a car, they took a couple pictures, and then the photo went viral. No one knew who this was. And the authorities, is my understanding from whispers in the wind, that the authorities wanted to know who this was and were searching for a long time to figure out who this was. And when they figured it out, because social media being social media, like you can eventually trace it around, it gets shared the right ways. I am cynical enough to think this was a targeted investigation, that authorities at different levels and different agencies said, rip this person's life apart, find anything we can hang on this frickin' person. And it wound up being a postal inspection. Like, who the hell gets a postal inspection? Come on. It wound up being a postal inspection of her mail being searched, where she had like various templates and ID things that she was checking out, you know, from like shady suppliers. And that's what strung all this together. That's what the investigation turned into, and it grew from there. And then smashy on the apartment door, taken away in chains, and away we go. Now, there's one other element, and again, I'm not going to link to a bunch of the, like, because the government's arguments are insane. Like the way they write it up, they'll write up as if someone is a dragon beast monster eating babies and, you know, pooping false American currency to defraud the economy or something. And that's for like someone who parked wrong. Like the government will load up their arguments so badly that their filings are practically fiction. Among those, again, that's why I don't link to it, there were, among all the interesting hacker lab stuff that they confiscated her freaking cosplay lightsaber, saying it was a weapon. Speaking of weapons, there were weapon parts. There were alleged to be pieces of like 80% receivers and other things she was tinkering with, she was experimenting with. I don't really know the truth of whether there were any actual firearms in complete form or not. But as mentioned, right, like Kara had a record from when she was like a homeless trans vet. Like when she has some trespassing charges for sleeping where she shouldn't when she was unhoused. She had some like fake ID things like from decades ago in her past. So the government, as part of their argument, this is where it gets interesting for all my Second Amendment folk. They tried to say, well, that's a felon in possession, right? You can't have firearms around. Now, the interesting part of this, and this is where I'm going to need legal minds that are better than mine, is that Kara's past is 100% nonviolent. And due to recent changes and recent case law in the United States, those with a history of no violent felonies can either apply, you'll have to correct me down in the comments, can either apply to have their Second Amendment rights restored, or are considered under some circuit court decisions, I believe, to have their Second Amendment rights restored. That is the filing that is currently in front of the courts right now as part of her ongoing process. And I have leafed through it. It's a fascinating argument. I think it holds water. I think it has a lot of merit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kick it to my buddy Ian, Firearms Ian. Nope, not that, the other Firearms Ian. Ian Runkle up in Canada, the Canadian firearms lawyer. If you don't follow Runkle of the Bailey, excellent channel. Really good cat, excellent analysis on a lot of topics. Occasionally he will treat an American topic because, you know, American law has a way of percolating through the international community. And what happens to people in the US affects the gun community at large. So when I told him, I said, hey, there's this interesting Second Amendment restoration of rights kind of freedoms argument happening with my friend. I'm very close to the case. So there's the filing, the initial filing, there's the government's response, and I believe there's a counterpoint from Allegra, her attorney, her lead counsel. If Ian Runkle wants to add it to his rotation, he'll drop it on his channel. I'll link to his channel down below, and if he does the video, I'll like edit the end screen of this video to link to it. But if you don't know Runkle of the Bailey, I definitely recommend you give him a check out. And in the meantime, just thank you all for all your well wishes. Keep sending any comments or any, you know, just praise, any support, anything you can at all. If you want to share that, I will pass it along to Kara. I don't ask for money. I don't ask for financial support. That's not what this is about. It's just about community support and goodwill, and we will see what happens as we get to the next page in her story. But that's the page we're on right now. All right. Thanks for listening. Thank you for caring. Look out for each other, and whatever you do, wherever you wind up, stay safe out there.